phone with me right now is Tom Kitchar, who is the president of the Waldo Mining District. How you doing, Mr. Kitchar? Thanks for taking the time today.
I'm doing fine, Lars, and I'm glad to be on.
I understand that mining is under attack at the state legislature right now, but it's not just miners that might be affected by this bill. You were on not so long ago to talk about Senate Bill 115 that was going to prohibit almost all placer mining in Oregon. Now we've got Senate Bill 401 by Senator Alan Bates of Ashland. Explain to people how this bill would change what are called scenic streams within the state and what effect that might have on people living within a quarter mile of those waters.
Sure. The bill basically doubles the amount of state-designated scenic waterways, which was the State Scenic Waterway Act, I believe, was passed in 1988, voter approval, and it was designed to protect particularly beautiful rivers from any intrusion on the scenic value for people that happen to be floating down the river or boating. This new bill, though, would add to that the complete Applegate River, the Little Applegate, the South Umpqua, the Sandy River, a whole bunch of creeks, which is really strange because the Act only talks about rivers. It doesn't mention creeks, so I don't know how a creek is scenic. And the Rogue River, for one, in particular, right where it flows through the town of Grants Pass, the town of Rogue River, and the town of Gold Hill. And under the Scenic Waterway Act, if you happen to own property within a quarter mile of those waters, you will no longer be able to do anything to your property that affects the scenery from the river without the state's approval.
Now, what is that? Does that mean that if I owned a house, I don't, but if I owned a house a few hundred feet from that river, and I'd owned it for a long time, so I'm grandfathered in, I can't go out and say add on to it or paint it a different color?
Correct.
So they're going to take away people's use of their own property without due process or compensation. How does that square up with the Constitution?
Well, what they tell you is that, well, you have to send us a notification of what you intend to do. I'm not sure if there's a fee involved, but knowing Oregon, there probably is a non-refundable application fee, but I don't know that for certain. And they have up to a year to process your notice. If you don't hear from them in a year, then supposedly under the Act, you're good to go.
Now, in the meantime, during that year, do they have public hearings, or do they give all my friends and neighbors who don't want me to add on to my house the ability to come in and advocate against it?
That's possible. I'm not sure if that's mandatory. It might depend on what exactly it is you're planning on doing. Of course, any existing structures and things on your property would be grandfathered, but any new development, including a road, you want to put a dock up or a deck, or like you say, paint your house, the bill is full of words such as you must put up some type of screen so that whatever it is you're doing is not visible from the water.
So even while you're adding on, you're putting up. Now, what about a fence? Can I put a fence up in my yard if I'm a quarter mile from the river or less?
If they approve it.
And they have a year to decide whether to approve it or not.
Correct.
Now, this is crazy. Do you know how many people this might affect directly if they make this change and double the number of river miles that are affected by this?
Oh, boy, just on the Rogue River itself, through those three towns, just as a wild guess, you're probably 1,000 or more easily.
And how are they reacting to all this? Is anybody down there paying attention and understanding the legislation?
They don't even know about it. They probably don't even know about it. We've tried to get the word out, but we have, just like the fish wrapper, our local paper isn't exactly hot on private property issues. There is a news release from Alan Bates that says that this is really good for Oregon. We got the trout fishermen are all for this to protect our threatened rivers and streams. It's just crazy.
I'm talking to Tom Kitchar, by the way, who's president of the Waldo Mining District in Southwest Oregon. How does this affect the mining activity that you're interested in? It would just be a flat ban on doing any of it on these rivers?
In the State Scenic Waterway Act, as interpreted by Theodore Kulongowski while he was State Attorney General, he interpreted the act to mean all placer mining means all placer mining, and the Scenic Waterway Act just flatly prohibits it within the water and within the quarter-mile corridor on either side of the water.
So if you now explain for people who haven't heard of this before how placer mining works, how the water and how you use water to find the gold.
Well, there's two kinds of mineral deposits. There's lode and placer. A lode mine or the lode deposit is your typical underground hard rock mine where people sink shafts and have tunnels and things like that. Everything that isn't that is a placer. And placer deposits are generally where a vein of ore has eroded and usually through the action of water has made concentrations of, especially in our case, we're talking about gold.
Yeah.
And because gold is real heavy, it actually settles in certain areas of running streams and rivers where it concentrates. And those are the areas that we look for because, we want to get the most we can. And what most of us use are little suction dredges, which are just small underwater vacuum cleaners. The people that don't like us, of course, claim that our machines are giant and huge and they're powered by huge gasoline engines. We use engines that you normally find on your typical lawnmower. The machines we use generally fit in the back of a pickup truck. We can move typically maybe half to two-thirds of a yard an hour of material through one of these machines. You can almost out-shovel it if you had it. You just can't shovel it.
I was going to say, I can almost move that much bark dust in an hour, so I would hope.
So we want to go out in the rivers. The problem we have with this, the main problem we have with the Scenic Waterway Act that the state has, is it has no exemption for if you're operating on federal lands open to the mining law. So we have a federal law that grants us the right to property in our mining claims to actually go out and mine these minerals. There's a Mineral Policy Act of 1970, federal law. Congress decided that it's the continued intent of Congress to foster and encourage the development of the mineral resources in this country. So that's what we're trying to do, and here you have the state potentially passing a law that prohibits that activity because of a state designation. But it's all illegal. I mean, the Supreme Court has already ruled on these things, and the states and other local governments can't supersede the federal law.
Hey, Tom, tell me this. Is there any evidence that you doing this kind of activity has a detrimental effect on the fish?
The only thing that they could actually point their finger at, and I will grant it, if we sucked up fish eggs or buried them in tailings, that would be harmful to the fish eggs.
All right.
But that's been mitigated for years by the state has set what they call the in-water work period, and it's set by Oregon Department of Fish and Game, or Fish and Wildlife. And typically in Oregon, we're only allowed in the water when there are no fish eggs present.
So that's problem solved. And second issue is, I want people to think about this. You're out there with your little suction dredge, moving a half a yard an hour, and say you're doing it very actively. How does your activity and your effect on that stream compare to, say, a good heavy winter rain that sluices water through that same watershed?
There's absolutely no comparison. Even the Siskiyou National Forest, which we're down here in southern Oregon, probably has the highest concentration of suction dredging anywhere in the state. And that's simply because most of the streams down here have gold in them. And they've been mined continuously basically since the 1850s. The Siskiyou Forest a few years ago did a study, I'll call it, looking at how much material do the suction dredgers move every year compared to what moves naturally. And the figure they came up with was something in the neighborhood of 0.2%.
0.2%, 0.2% is what your activity is, and Mother Nature is the other 98.8.
Right. I looked at what happened when they took Savage Rapids Dam out of the Rogue River. There was an article in the Grants Pass Courier. The head guy from the Bureau of Reclamation estimated there was 200 1,000 cubic yards of sludge within the first 1,000 feet upstream of where this dam used to be. And all this material is going to start, of course, every time there's high water, it's going to start moving down the river. The spokesman for the fishing industry, his only quote was, well, so the river will run dirty for a few days.
And that's it.
Yeah,
and that's
we're fine with that.
Unbelievable. Tom, do you have a website where people can get this data, and also where they can get a list of state lawmakers who need to have their ears bent on this issue, so folks can pick up the phone or send an email and get the message to people like Alan Bates and others that this is not what we should do?
Sure thing. Waldo has a website up at basically just Google Waldo Mining District or www.waldominingdistrict.org. And you get to us. There's Willamette Valley Miners has a website. Another organization called Millennium Diggers has a website. We're also holding a rally at the state capitol on Thursday, February 28th, from 1 o'clock to 5 p.m. on the Capitol steps to protest these ridiculous activities. This basically is going to put thousands of Oregonians out of work.
I'll tell you what, we're going to see if we can get Alan Bates to come on and talk about this. I'm not holding my breath on that one, but Tom, keep up the work. And well, I'm just not the Ashland legislative group. I haven't come up with a clever name for them yet. We'll get with them, but that's Tom Kitchar, president of the Waldo Mining District. Tom, thanks so much. You've got the Lars Larson Show. Send those